Welcome everyone. This is my ATP 2022 season preview. We're going to go through the top 30 of the men's rankings here, and we got to start off with the big name in men's tennis right now. Certainly he had the best year last year. That is world number one, Novak Djokovic. And obviously sensational season last year, winning the Australian Open, Roland Garros, Wimbledon before kind of the pressure and the strain getting to him at the Olympics, losing to Sasha Zverev, and then at the US Open, losing in the final to Daniil Medvedev. I thought the most impressive part of Djokovic's season last year was by far his French Open run, not only coming back from 2 sets down twice against Lorenzo Musetti and then Stefanos Tsitsipas in the final, but of course that epic semifinal against Nadal, that third set that was well over 1 hour long. Djokovic and Nadal trading blows, and we know that Nadal typically the king there on the clay courts of Paris, but Djokovic one-upping him there for the second time in their careers, and second French Open title for him. He's now got the career Grand Slam ×2 in terms of having at least 2 of all the majors. So a lot of great accomplishments, but again, it did seem like he kind of wore down at the end. The pressure got to him. We saw that in Tokyo, losing the lead to Zverev, and then certainly getting outplayed in the US Open final against Daniil Medvedev. So the big questions for Djokovic leading into the 2022 season. First of all, the big news, he's not going to play at the ATP Cup with Team Serbia. That was announced this week, and there's still a lot of speculation about whether Novak will or will not play at the Australian Open. He either needs to be vaccinated or have a medical exemption to qualify for the Australian Open. So I think we've still got a few days left before we'll know for sure if Djokovic is going to play at the Aussie Open. But in my opinion, there's no way that he misses out on another chance to add to the major trophy case. I mean, it would be his 10th Australian Open. Of course, he's looking for that 21st Grand Slam title to leap over both Federer and Nadal. I think he's not getting any younger. Djokovic turning 35 in May this year, so he's going to want to be present at his most successful major. I'd be so shocked if it comes out in the next couple of days that he can't get a medical exemption or whatever, and he's not present in Melbourne. But again, he won't be at the ATP Cup with Team Serbia, and so let's see how motivated he is in 2022. As a Federer fan, I almost want Djokovic to kind of run up the scoreboard in terms of the major count. If he finished with 25, 26, 27 majors, that would almost be less painful for us Fed fans as opposed to him finishing with, say, 21 majors because of all of the close encounters in the past. The 2019 Wimbledon final is something that I'm never going to get over. Certainly 2011 US Open semifinal stings as well. But so let's see. I mean, Djokovic, he looked kind of burnt out at the end of last season. We're going to see if he's refreshed and hungry for blood. He's got so many, though, of the top accolades, even over Federer and Nadal. He's got the most total weeks at number one now. He accomplished that last year. He's also got the most year-end number ones, leaping over Pete Sampras, and he's got the most Masters 1000 titles now as of last year, and of course tied with Grand Slams with Fed and Nadal. So he doesn't have many boxes to check left. I mean, there's some longevity things that he still has to kind of catch Fed and Jimmy Connors with in terms of overall wins, overall titles, but the resume is as impressive as anyone. One word of note, though, Djokovic only played 13 tournaments in 2021. So I mentioned he's getting older. He's turning 35 this year. We'll see how he kind of manages his schedule, though, heading into this season. I think there's going to be a lot of openings for the other players because of that. And the top guy who might be a benefactor is the world number 2. That is your 2021 US Open champion, Daniil Medvedev, who's nipping at Novak's heels for number 1 in the world. He's got some good opportunities to make up points early in 2022. And let's see, we got a comment from my older brother who's in Ecuador right now. He says, "What's up, Snowman? What do you think about Kyrgios this year?" We're gonna get to Kyrgios. Basically, I'm gonna get back to Medvedev, but Kyrgios he's Hugh Jackman. He's the greatest showman. He's always going to put on a fantastic show, especially in Australia. He's only 26 years of age, but I heard a couple interviews where Nick said he might not be playing too much longer. Might just sit on his millions at this point and kind of move into the next phase of his career, video games or whatever that is. So I'm just going to savor Kyrgios while we can. In terms of my expectations, though, for Kyrgios, it's always, you can't really expect anything. Hopefully, he's always good for one or two Match of the Year candidates, especially, like I said, early in the year in Australia. Last year at the Australian Open, he had that awesome match against Ugo Humbert. Dominic Team came back against him, so he's an entertainer. He'll put on some great shows, but thanks a lot for that comment, Mike. Cheers from Ecuador. It's beautiful. Hope you're enjoying the mountain air. But again, Medvedev. Back to Medvedev, he's nipping at Novak's heels for number one, and matchup-wise, Medvedev and Djokovic, they met 3 times last year in some big matches, all finals. So you had the Australian Open final, which Djokovic, breezed by Medvedev in 3 sets. You had Medi exercising some demons, getting a little bit of revenge in New York, winning the U.S. Open final. And then that grudge match at the Paris Masters late last year was very telling for me. And the key stat in that one, Djokovic won 55 compared to 39 points for Medvedev when the rallies were 0-4 shots. So what does that mean? Djokovic winning most of the shorter points. He was mixing in a lot of serve and volley. He was being pretty aggressive, uncharacteristically so from Djokovic. But I think it says how much Medvedev can kind of beat Djokovic at his own game. I think at this point, Medvedev, he can outlast. He can defend better than Djokovic. But he's got to serve huge. He's got to play big to defeat the Serbian and win more majors because it can't be that skewed. The short points can't be that skewed. Medvedev's got to give himself a fighting chance, but I'm expecting an incredible 2022 overall for Medvedev. I think he's got to keep improving on clay and grass. He made some good runs, though, at the French Open, at Wimbledon last year. He's got to keep improving there, but he's going to be the number 1 player in the world very, very soon. I actually think this summer Medvedev will overtake Djokovic for the number 1 ranking. Last year, Medi, I think he broke a 16-year drought of a non-Big Four player being in the top 2 of the ATP rankings. So basically, since 2005, either 1 and 2 in the rankings were either Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, or Murray, until Medvedev this past season. So maybe he takes it up a notch higher now and gets that number 1 ranking. He's in great hands though right now. So keep expecting great things from him. Number 3 in the world is the German Alexander Zverev. You can also expect big things for him on the horizon. He is the easy choice for me as the next man to win his maiden major title. Highlights last year for Zverev: the Olympic gold, the comeback against Djokovic, beat him in the ATP Finals too, and then maybe a more important win of the year, the ATP Finals Championship against Medvedev. And it was Medi who had won the past 5 matchups in the head-to-head between Zverev and Medvedev. But Zverev, he was serving some bombs in that final, moving amazingly. He's got all the tools, and the key stat in their matchup, Zverev versus Medvedev, is that I think that they showed on Tennis Channel, I don't know if it was for that match in Paris specifically, or that match at the ATP Final specifically, or maybe their previous encounter at the Paris Masters, but Zverev was going cross-court on his forehand 72% of the time against Medvedev. So in contrast, Medi, he's about 50-50. Whether going down the line or cross court. Zverev, oftentimes with his forehand, it is his weaker ground stroke. His backhand is probably top 3 in the world. I mean, it is world-class, rock solid. His backhand is a thing of beauty. But we know that Zverev's forehand can break down. So 72% of the time cross court, he's got to do a much better job of mixing it up and kind of taking some chances, because Medvedev's IQ is just too high. He's going to get into a rhythm. He's that kind of master chess player. He's going to see 4, 5, 6 shots in advance. I think that's the key, though, for Zverev against Medvedev this year, mixing up that forehand, not going cross-court so much. Their head-to-head, though, is now at 6-6, and Zverev was just in incendiary form towards the end of last season. He's 31-4 in his last 35 matches, and I just think there's no way he's not winning a major in the next 2 years. Maybe, probably this year, but I'll give him 2 years for sure. I guarantee Charles Barkley, guarantee Zverev will win a major sometime in the next 2 years. He's the next guy to get christened as a major champ. Number 4, guy who would love to be christened as well, Stefanos Tsitsipas, the Greek god. Kind of a melancholy ending to Steph's 2021 season. Had that elbow injury, had to pull out of the ATP Finals. Really, though, only Djokovic had a better first half of the season than Tsitsipas. Steph, he had the Roland Garros final. He had the Monte Carlo title. He had that insane comeback against Nadal at the Australian Open, coming from 2 sets down. That was only the second time ever that Nadal had lost a 2-set lead. And the other time was at the 2015 U.S. Open against Fabio Fognini. So great comeback there. Certainly a match of the year candidate. But a disappointing second half of the season. He kind of cooled off. It was that another Wimbledon first-round exit for Steph, that time against Francis Tiafoe. He also lost in the third round against Carlos Alcaraz, had the whole bathroom break controversy that really started kind of in Cincinnati against Zverev, and then against Andy Murray. There was a lot of drama and continued, and it snowballed. And, Tsitsipas is a hard guy to read. He kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. I'm not really quite sure what to expect from him. I think he'll probably end up making another Grand Slam semifinal or 2 this year. I don't know if he gets back to a final, though, this season. I think there's a couple guys who were injured last year who might be taking some of the opportunities away from him. But certainly the future's still bright for Steph. So those are the top 4 guys. Those are going to be likely the top 4 at the end of the season, honestly. Djokovic, Medvedev, Zverev, and Tsitsipas. Again, Snowman here doing a YouTube Live. We're going over the top 30 of the ATP rankings, getting ready for the 2022 season. Right now I'm recording this on Wednesday, December 29th. When you see it, it might be the 30th or beyond. Only a couple days away from the ATP Cup beginning, the premier team event in men's tennis. So I'm very excited for that. And then, of course, the Australian Open beginning, I believe, January 17th down under. So it's one of my favorite times of the year. I think the Australian Open is probably my favorite major. It's evolved over the years. It used to be the U.S. Open because that was the only one that was kind of time-wise great to watch for a young boy growing up with a reasonable bedtime. But at this point, I kind of don't worry about it. I stay up all night, sleep at some other time. Aussie Open is the best, though. It's the happy slam for a reason, So that's the top 4. Let's move on to number 5 in the rankings. And please ask questions. We got a little bit of activity, but jump in, ask any tennis-related questions, or really any snowman-related, anything. Let's keep going. Andrei Rublev is your number 5 player in the world, and I gotta say the ugly word of the past couple years, and that is COVID. Rublev, one of 6 players from the preseason exhibition tournament in Abu Dhabi who tested positive for COVID afterwards. So Rublev did have to pull out of that aforementioned ATP Cup. We'll see how he is feeling. I think he said it's very mild symptoms for him. But the question for Rublev is, what did he do to improve over the offseason? Because he's made strides. There's no doubt about it. He had an impressive victory on clay against Rafa and Monte Carlo this past season. He made the Cincinnati Final. But a very telling stat, Rublev 4-13 all-time against Medvedev, Zverev, and Tsitsipas. So those are kind of the next big 3. Again, Rublev 4-13 against those 3 gentlemen. So I just think those guys, they feel so comfortable against Rublev. The Cincinnati Final versus Zverev was embarrassing. I mean, that was straight up a shellacking, less than an hour. That was Steffi Graf-esque what Zverev did to his good buddy Rublev that day in Cincinnati. There's a lot of good things with Rublev. The ball striking ability off the charts, but when is he going to get a net game? When is he going to improve his defense, his movement? His second serve has been very susceptible the past couple of years. When's he going to add more variety to his game, get a reliable slice? He can still work on his endurance, his overall stamina. Tennis is more than just hitting the stuffing off the ball, and I think it's honestly amazing that Rublev has gotten all the way to 5 in the world with such a one-dimensional skill set, because I think he's got so many things he can improve on. So he'll keep working, but I hope to see it this year, because the last couple of years it's been pretty similar. And as I said, those top guys have gotten very comfortable against him. So that's Rublev. The second man with 20 major titles, that is Rafa Nadal, the number 6 in the world. He was, like Rublev, also picked up COVID in that tournament in Abu Dhabi. Looked very rusty. Rafa, the foot injury cost him to play his last match late in the summer last year at the City Open in DC. But I kind of liken Rafa to the San Antonio Spurs dynasties of the 2000s to the 2010s. I don't know if there's any basketball fans out there, but Nadal, we've kind of prematurely tried to end the Spurs dynasty, or Nadal, saying for years and years that Rafa's done. He plays too destructive a style of tennis to kind of have the longevity of a Roger Federer. But look at what he's done the last few years. I mean, just the past season, Rafa was 24-5 overall. He had the second best win percentage on the tour, just after Novak Djokovic. So he is 35, but we can't count Nadal out just yet. I mean, the guy won both Barcelona and Rome last season for like the 27th time each. It was his 17th straight top 10 finish. Nadal has been in the top 10 for like 16 years. I mean, I don't even remember what I was doing in 2005, but you better believe if Rafa plays at the French Open as well, he'll be the favorite there too. So if Novak slips up at the Australian Open, or if Novak doesn't play in Melbourne, Rafa could somehow be the first player to 21 Grand Slam titles. So we'll see. That's the story with Rafa. Number 7, Matteo Beretini, the lovable Italian. Really solid year. He made his first Grand Slam title. Made his first Grand Slam title at the Wimbledon Championships. And I think 3 to 5 years from now, or whenever Djokovic is officially retired and done, there's going to be a huge void in grass court dominance. And we know that Medvedev, he's kind of naturally a little bit more defensive. Stefanos Tsitsipas, he's lost at the first round of Wimbledon the last 2 seasons. Thomas Fabiano and Tiafoe knocking him off there. Zverev is he's fine on grass, but he still prefers the other 2 surfaces probably a little bit more. Rublev and Rood, they're more baseliners that kind of lack the volleying skills that are required on grass. So my point is, Matteo Beretini could have a monopoly on grass court tennis in the near future. The serving stats are always impressive for him. The second highest service hold percentage last year, just after John Isner, and at 90%, and then the highest break point save percentage at 72%. So Beretini playing some very clutch tennis at the best times. A little bit of a heartbreak for him in the last tournament of the year in Turin, the ATP Finals, which he finally qualified for, or I guess it was his second time, but he did have to pull out with an abdominal injury. So, it wasn't what Beretini wanted there. He was really amped up to be playing in front of the home Italian crowd, but he's going to be back and should be better than ever. Number 8, Casper Rood, was also at the ATP Finals in Turin. And basically everything I said about Andrei Rublev, ditto, same goes for Casper Rood. I mean, he's an extremely high floor player. He doesn't lose to guys outside of the top 30 very often, but he doesn't necessarily threaten the top 5. I mean, Medvedev at the ATP Finals, the Russian never looked not comfortable or under pressure in any way against Rood. I just think those guys, they get so comfortable. They hone in. They get in the zone against guys like Rublev and Rood. I don't think it's as critical with Rood as it is for Rublev, because last year was essentially Casper's breakout season. But he's got to watch like some Dominic Team tape and just study up. I mean, he like Rublev, he's got a lot of the great ball striking tools to be a contender for majors, especially on his preferred surface of clay in Paris. He's got the most RPMs on both the forehand, and I think that maybe top 5 in the backhand side, but definitely on the forehand side, Rood can rip it. I mean, that thing just bounces off the clay, especially at high elevations too. But Rood, he's got to keep improving. Number 9 is Hubert Hurkacz, and some giant leaps for Poland's finals last season. He's the highest ranked Polish man ever. And I don't know what was more impressive for Hubie last season, winning the Miami title or knocking off Med and Fed back-to-back at the All-England Club. He's a top 10 server by most metrics, but also a very agile mover for somebody who's 6'5", a little bit of an unorthodox style to his game. Certainly not as is not as conventional as some other players in the top 15. I've heard all the Andy Murray comparisons with his game, kind of a bigger Andy Murray, but there's something to be said about his all-court game, the baseline skills plus the power. He's just got to find some more consistency from month to month, but I think there's a lot of good things in Hurkacz's future. Speaking of the future, this is kind of the number one guy of the future, the number one young man leading the way. The number 10 player in the ATP rankings right now is Yannick Sinner, and I have been itching to talk about the 20-year-old. He is the total package. I mean, he is a future number one overall player and a multi-Grand Slam winner. You know, lead pipe, stone cold lock. Sinner is going to do some great things over the next 10 to 15 years. He's made a very swift progression. He's won a lot of smaller titles now, several top 10 wins last season, beating guys like Rublev, Rood, and Hurkacz. He's had some growing pains. First round defeat last year. Tough draw against Denis Shapovalov, who I'm going to get to in a sec. Also lost in the Wimbledon first round against Martin Fucsovics, but he's also quite literally still growing. So I mentioned the growing pains, but I think his physio said a few weeks ago, I was reading an article that Sinner is literally still growing at age 20. So he's growing both on the court and off, I suppose. You know, he could have been a champion skier, just like Djokovic, great on the slopes, and that has helped with his agility, his pliability, very similar to Novak, so he plays great defense. And Sinner, he's got a unique blend of both the offense and defense. That's why a lot of people are so high on him, like myself. Nick Kyrgios says that Sinner hits the ball harder than anyone on the tour, and he checks so many boxes. Probably other than maybe Medvedev, I think Sinner has more boxes checked than anyone else. So it's not a question of if, but when for Sinner. He's got the 6th best odds to win the Australian Open this season. It's just, I think it's just Djokovic, Nadal, and then Medvedev, Zverev, Tsitsipas, and Sinner's right there already at age 20. He is, the sky's the limit for the kid. He's got such a cool demeanor, the calmness. A lot of the other young players, Shapovalov, you see more the fiery side, the emotional, passionate side. Sinner, he's got that, but he keeps it underneath. He stays composed. He's more like Bjorn Borg than John McEnroe per se. So Sinner is going to be winning Grand Slams very, very soon. All right, another young man who is right there and sneaking into the top echelon of the game, number 11 in the rankings, is Felix Auger-Aliassime, the 21-year-old Canadian. And the question for him is, I don't know, I'm pretty perplexed when I watch FAA a lot. Can his mental block, though, be fixed? I mean, he's 0-8 in his career in all-time in finals. So he's one of the best players in the world. He still hasn't won a single title. I mean, you can go down the list of the ATP 100 rankings, and most of those guys have at least one title at a 250 event, at a, whatever the case may be. For him to not have a title yet is very strange, because on paper, Auger-Aliassime, he stacks up pretty similarly to Sinner. He's got the game, he's got the professionalism, he's got an insane work ethic. I mean, I believe in him, really, but he doesn't quite have the intangibles on the court. We've seen choke after choke with FAA, the blown 2-set lead to Aslan Karatsev at last year's Australian Open. I was trying to think of a player, maybe someone can help me out, a player who's been really good, but kind of in the last 15, 20 years has been known as a choker, kind of shrinking in the big moments in finals or on break points. Like, it seems like he does everything right. He just kind of has this little mental block. But even despite all that for FAA, quarterfinals at Wimbledon, semifinals at the U.S. Open, he's right there. He brought on Uncle Tony, Nadal's uncle, to help him out in the coaching box last year. He's doing all the right things, but for Auger-Aliassime, he's just gotta do it. I mean, it all looks great, but he's just got to get it done. Number 12, Cameron Nori, who I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch a whole lot of Nori last season. He might have had one of the quietest Masters 1000 titles of all time at Indian Wells. Maybe it was because Indian Wells took place in October compared to the usual March. Maybe it was because of the less than arduous path that Nori took. He didn't have to play a single top 10 player en route to that championship. Or maybe it's because he's a very non-animated Brit, but only Medvedev and Zverev had more wins overall than Cam in 2021. So I'm looking forward to watching him more this season. The knock on him, though, hasn't been to a major round of 16. So he's number 12 in the world, and he still hasn't been to the second week of a Grand Slam. Nori still has a lot more work to do, but breakthrough year for him last season. He's got a lot to be proud of. Number 13 is the Argentine, Diego Schwartzman. He's been a top 15 player for basically like 4 years now. Another season of being top 5 in break percentage. And look, we know what Schwartzman is. I mean, he's an incredible mover. He's a tremendous athlete, a defender. He's got the rally endurance. He's probably going to win a couple more clay events this season, the 250 events. He loves to play in that golden swing in February and kind of beat up on lesser opposition. But look, he's doing his thing. His best shot is for a major final, I'd say, is Roland Garros. I mean, he's already been to a semifinal, had that upset over Domi a couple of years ago. But the last 4 years at the French Open, 2 quarters and a semifinal appearance. So at 5'7", we're always going to mention the height when it comes to Schwartzman, but at 5'7", shortest Grand Slam semifinalist in 40 years. And it always amazes me that he's accumulated over $10 million in career prize money. Schwartzman just keeps trucking on, kind of like the little beast, as like David Ferrer. Schwartzman, he's like the little beast. Number 14, though, next player I really want to talk about, one of my favorite players since he burst onto the scene 5 years ago, and that is the Canadian Denis Shapovalov. He is the third player from Abu Dhabi who has tested positive for COVID alongside Rublev and Nadal. Shapovalov played in that tournament, so he's not at the ATP Cup either, I believe, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully he's in good health and can still make it for the Australian Open. But it's been very frustrating for me to watch some of Shapovalov's younger contemporaries, guys like Auger-Aliassime and Sinner, leapfrog him ahead of the rankings because Shapo should have already been there by now. I mean, he has it all. The shot-making abilities are off the charts. He's got some skills, some shot-making skills that others dream of. The torque he's able to generate with that magnificent one-handed backhand, the movement, he's so athletic, but it keeps coming back to these silly mental errors at inopportune times. And as opposed to Auger-Aliassime, it's not like he chokes or anything. It's a different kind of choke, though, because I think Auger-Aliassime, he just gets nervous or there's like a mental block. But for Shapo, it's more shot decision and decision-making as opposed to whether you make the shot or not. I mean, I see so many times in a Shapo match, he's going down the line when he should just take the easy shot cross court. Just take what your opponent's giving you. I mean, third highest double fault percentage in 2021 at almost 8%. Obviously, that needs some work. He's still only 22, but he's also got to get, this frustrates me, he's got to get like a chip or a block return because I see Shapovalov, he's always taking these full cuts, these elongated swings on every return. And it's like, just get it in play. Just start the point and kind of make your opponent work a little bit. You don't have to be Superman on every point. So he needs a little bit of that rally endurance that I was just talking about with Diego Schwartzman. But I know Shapo did recently bring on Jamie Delgado onto his coaching team. So hopefully that helps. Delgado is with Andy Murray for a long time. But Shapo, he's got to get it done. He's got to get it done because it's beautiful to watch, but it's also painstakingly frustrating to watch that guy. All right, number 15, we're going to talk about Dominic Team, who he also withdrew from the ATP Cup. He had a non-COVID illness, and then he made a post a couple of days ago that he's going to be starting his season late in January in Argentina at the Cordoba Open. So he's not going to play at the Australian Open, unfortunately. That's really sad for me. We haven't seen Team in about 6 months. Hasn't played since late June. Just a 9-9 record last season with that serious right wrist injury. Had to have surgery. But for me, Team is the ultimate X factor for the 2022 season because he had a tremendous 2020 year, making the Aussie Open final and then winning his first Grand Slam in New York. But he's a guy, Team, he doesn't really fit into a category. I mean, you've got the big three. You've got some other injured legends of the game, guys like Andy Murray, Stan Wawrinka, Juan Martín del Potro. You've got some other really good aging veterans, guys like, Kei Nishikori, Marin Cilic. You've obviously got the next big three. You've got like Medvedev, Zverev, Tsitsipas. You've got the next big three in terms of Sinner, Auger-Aliassime, Shapovalov. Team doesn't really fit into a category for me, and he can be a real X factor at the majors this season. Again, I'm so bummed out that he's missing the Aussie Open, but he's a guy who can go head to head against Djokovic and not be afraid. Play that Wawrinka-esque style of tennis with all the weapons in the world. Powerful forehand, and then the aesthetically gorgeous weapon that is Team's one-handed backhand. I was really excited. We were supposed to get Team versus Medvedev, one of the first matches of the year at the ATP Cup, Team Russia versus Team Austria, but Medvedev will still be there for Russia, but Team is no longer playing for Team Austria, as I said, and I think Austria actually got replaced by France, so France will now be at that event, but no Team at the Aussie Open. He's my X Factor, though. Watch out for him this season. Number 16 on the ATP rankings list is the man whose shirt I'm repping right now, one of my favorites of all time, Roger Federer. And I just got to say, even as a super Fed fan, like how he's still 16 in the rankings, it's just incredible. I mean, Federer has played 19 matches total over the last 2 years. We know he's 40 years old now, but he's played only 19 matches in 2 years. 2020, we get it. It was a shortened COVID season, weren't as many tournaments, but just 9-4 in 2021. The very somber ending at the 2021 Wimbledon Championships, losing in straight sets to Hurkacz, and came out shortly afterwards that he was very injured, had to get a third knee surgery done in the last couple of years. He just had that a few months ago, so he's definitely not going to play at the Aussie Open. Fed won't, and maybe not even Wimbledon as well. I really hope he can get back for Wimbledon, but I think at this point, Fed probably just wants to go out on his own terms. The end comes pretty quickly sometimes for athletes. We've seen it with, I think about Peyton Manning. 1 year you're winning MVP in like 2013, you're the best in the league, and then 2015 you're throwing flutter ducks all across the field. Everyone's calling you washed up. I mean, it happens quick, the drop off. So Fed's got to be careful, but I just think he wants a few more tournaments. He wants a couple more runs at a major where he goes out on his own terms and he can be pain-free after his career. The end is definitely near, but hopefully one last hurrah. And I'm looking at a couple of records for Fed. I don't think he's going to catch Jimmy Connors with the overall titles, but Fed still only 24 wins away from passing Connors for the most wins all time. Most match wins in men's tennis history. Fed only 24 behind Connors. So you got to think that he's going to play 7, 8, 9 more tournaments and win on average 3 matches at each of them. I think that record can be well within his reach if Fed is hopefully back on the court sometime in 2022. Number 17, a player who I'm not quite as big a fan of. Nothing bad, but Federer's, he's all-time class. Cristian Guerine is number 17. He's kind of bland for my liking, honestly. He's more of a clay court specialist. This past season, 15-9, the record on clay, just 6-9 elsewhere, though that is not nice. The numbers can be misleading. All 7 victories for Guerine at majors last year were against players outside of the top 80. So I'm still kind of waiting for his breakthrough moment. Might make a Roland Garros semifinal one day. I think that's kind of Christian Guerine's ceiling. But again, kind of a bland player for my liking. Number 18, not so bland, Aslan Karatsev, who won the hearts of a lot of fans last year. Karatsev, the Russian, the 2021 ATP Most Improved Player of the Year. His ranking went from 112 to 15 at the end of the year. Right now he's at 18, but that is a Raducanu-esque ascension for Aslan Karatsev. Everyone's going to remember the Australian Open run where he went from the qualies to the semifinals, beat Diego Schwartzman, beat FAA, beat the Bulgarian Grigor Dimitrov, kind of a late bloomer at 28 years of age. You don't see that as much. Certainly the number one example I think of, Stan Wawrinka, a guy who didn't win his first major till his late 20s. But Karatsev, he also had other notable wins last season against Djokovic, Medvedev, Sinner, Rublev, Hurkacz, Shapo. That's 5 top 10 guys plus Shapovalov. He had a whole host of big headhunting wins last season. Karatsev, a big game hunter, kind of a Cilic-esque game. Certainly a lot of firepower for King Aslan. Number 19, Roberto Bautista Agut. His form dipped a little bit last year. 29-25 overall record. No titles. Highlight was probably the Miami Open semifinal where he defeated Big John Isner and Daniil Medvedev before falling to Sinner. Number 20, Pablo Carreno Busta, another workman-like Spaniard. Got the bronze medal at the Olympics. That's no laughing matter for Carreno Busta. Kept Djokovic off the podium there. Carreno Busta has been known to be a thorn in the side of Joker. Of course, it was him who was playing against Djokovic when he defaulted at the 2020 U.S. Open, where Djokovic hit a linesperson with a tennis ball. Number 21, we're going through the top 30 of the men's ATP rankings here. Gonna talk about a few other players as well, then I make some predictions. Just casually going through the rankings here, giving some thoughts, and as we get ready for the 2022 men's tennis season, which is just around the corner, going to be talking all things women's tennis tomorrow, the 30th at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States. This is Greg Kolarko, the Snowman, live from Miami, Florida. And so back to the rankings. Number 21, though, Gael Monfisse, who... There's some dark days for Gael. An 8-match losing streak early in last year, but he got married to Svitolina. We love Monfisse, and he's got a great personality. The smile is at the top of the game. I'm going to savor his remaining days, just like what I said about Kyrgios before. Monfisse is a class guy who I just love to watch. He's 35 now. The athleticism certainly waning for Le Monf, but he can still produce fireworks on any given day. Number 22 in the rankings is the Georgian Nicolas Basilashvili. Big highlight for him. Indian Wells final in October where he ended up losing to Cam Nori, but Basilashvili, he might hit the biggest ball in tennis. I was thinking it's probably Basilashvili, Yannick Sinner, Andre Rublev. I think that would be my top 3 of who hits the biggest ball in the game today. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment. Let me know who you think has the most. I'm just talking from the back of the court. I mean, he thumps it. Like he smacks it hard. So that's Basilashvili. He won Doha last year, and he's pretty scary when he's clicking. Beat Fed at that event in Doha. So that's him. 23, we've got Taylor Fritz, who is our first American on the list here. At one point, I think American men, they didn't have a guy in the top 30 of the rankings. That was the first time that happened in over, 40, 50 years. So American men's tennis, not in the best spot right now, but they do have some young talent. I'm not a homer in terms of watching the American men. I kind of just root for whoever tickles my fancy. But Taylor Fritz, I think I actually believe in him the most of any of these American men. I mean, certainly you've got Isner and Oppelco, who are kind of the heavyweights, the big servers. Francis Tiafoe had he racked up some marquee wins last season. Sebastian Korda definitely has the highest ceiling. He's coming very soon. Tommy Paul, real cool guy. He won Stockholm to cap his 2021 season. Beat Shapo, Tiafoe, and Fritz there. Jensen Brooksby, we know he balled out at the U.S. Open, had that stellar performance against Djokovic. I think if I were to make my American men's power rankings, though, as of right now, it would be Taylor Fritz at the top. Fritz, he heated up late last season, 3 top 10 wins in the last month, beating Zverev, Rublev, and Beretini, also taking out Sinner and Nori as well. So I think I would have Fritz number 1, probably Korda number 2. I'm talking for the 2022 season. These are my American men power rankings. I go Fritz, I go Korda, I'd go Tiafoe at number 3. I'd go Tommy Paul at 4. Then I would have the serve bots, Isner and Oppelco. I would have Jensen Brooksby at number 7. He's got to work on his serve. It'll take him a couple more years, but if he develops a beefier first serve, gets a couple of free points there, Brooksby's going to be a menace to deal with. And then maybe like Brandon Nakashima as number 8. That's kind of my hierarchy of American men's tennis, since I know probably a lot of you guys are into the Americans. At 24, we've got another American man, that is John Isner. And at age 36, he's probably on his last legs, but Dr. Evo, he's still playing at 42, or at least I think he's still playing. So the 7-footers, those huge serves, they tend to have a little bit longer tennis life expectancy. They play shorter points. There's a little bit less wear and tear. So we'll see. I mean, Isner, he could go a handful more years still. The North American hardcourt tournament's always going to be where Isner's bread is buttered. That's where he's most comfortable. Last season, another title in Atlanta. That was his 6th Atlanta title overall. He had a couple nice wins over Rublev. So Isner, he's just keep trucking along. Number 25 in the world is the bad boy of British tennis. That is Dan Evans. I got to see Danny Evans in Delray Beach a couple of years ago. He's got a very aesthetically pleasing all-court game. He slices so much with that one-handed backhand. It's frustrating for opponents because they have to kind of adapt to his style. I mean, Evans does such a good job at 5'9". No major weapons that's going to blow anyone off a court, but he volleys well, he defends well. It really is a great all-court game. And he had a career win last year. I'll shout out my boy Bradley McKeska coming in. What's up, Bradley? I see you, man. Dan Evans, though, he had a really notable win, beating Djokovic to make the Monte Carlo semifinals. Had never beaten a top 5 player before that event last year. So I see some great improvements in Evans' game. 26 here, Riley Oppelco. We've got a few more players in the top 30. Then I want to get to some other guys and make some general predictions. But Oppelco, the other American behemoth at 6'11", is kind of that Isner 2.0, slightly better net skills and defensive skills. Honestly, I don't see him as a top 15 guy, though. I think he's probably higher floor, lower ceiling than a guy like John Isner, but he'll keep working on his game. Number 27, Lorenzo Sanego, who's going to be a very potent grass court threat in the near future. Italy is so stacked. I mean, Sanego, another guy alongside Sinner and Beretini and Fonini. If he ever gets going again, it's going to be Italy and Russia for years and years to come at the ATP Cup. The Laver Cup is Team Europe versus Team World, but I think Italy and Russia, they're going to be on top of men's tennis for the next 10, 12 years. Russia's got, Medvedev, Rublev, Karatsev, Hatchinoff. So certainly those two countries, I'd say, would be the top 2 on the men's side of things. Number 28 in the rankings is Grigor Dimitrov, a good guy. He had a nice little resurgence to end the 2021 season, made the semifinals in San Diego and Indian Wells. Dude must just love playing in the state of California. He breezed by Team in Melbourne to make the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. I think I give Grigor a pretty solid chance to make it back in the top 20 this year. I mean, Dimitrov's a guy who was winning the ATP Finals. He was the number 3 overall player just a few years ago. I think he's only probably like 30 years of age. So I'd give him maybe about a 65% chance to get back in the top 15, top 20 this season. He's going to have some peaks and valleys. I think his game, his performance is predicated kind of how he's feeling off the court so much. But, you got to love Grigor Dimitrov. Number 29 is Karen Hatchinoff, kind of the forgotten Russian at this point in the tennis landscape. We've got Med, we've got Rublev, we've got Karatsev, but Hatchinoff was really the first guy to break through at the 2018 Paris Indoors, the Masters tournament there. He won that title over Novak Djokovic in the final. He's got some blistering ground strokes. He'd be another guy I would add to that list alongside the biggest, beefiest hitters in the game. But he's always been fun to me to watch because Hatchinoff's game is a little bit different. I mean, he's got that extreme Western grip, generates a load of topspin off of both wings. I think he's just, it takes so long. He's like a mobile artillery unit. It takes so long for him to generate his power. If he can get his swing off, when he gets his shot off, it's a thing of beauty. But he's got to be a little bit quicker in and out of the corners. He's still making some improvements in his game, but he's on the underside of age 25, I believe. And then number 30 in the world, Marin Cilic, future Hall of Famer. Don't have too much to say about Cilic, your 2014 U.S. Open champ. Like Dimitrov, though, Cilic had a nice little run at times last season, so good for him. Few other guys I just want to highlight before I talk about who I think are going to win the majors this year on the men's side. Carlos Alcaraz. I really wanted to mention this kid because he's 19, 20 years old, but he plays with such a boldness, such a fearlessness, the young Spaniard. He won the ATP Next Gen Finals, and he had that signature upset victory over Tsitsipas at the U.S. Open. You might remember, and at that U.S. Open match, he was just launching some forehands. I mean, smoking some serves. The serve generally takes a little bit longer for these young players to develop and for them to really get at their ceiling. But he was smoking them that match, and he can make a lot of improvements there. He's just a super fun player to watch, though. Seems like he's fearless. He is 32 in the rankings. My bold prediction, probably not so bold. I think he's going to be top 15 by the end of 2022. Alcaraz he's just incredible to watch. Top 10, though, in wins overall last year. So that is Carlos Alcaraz. We've got some older vets to hit on quickly. 134 in the world is Sir Andy Murray, who is going to be at the Australian Open, accepting a wild card there. And it was nice to watch him at that Abu Dhabi exhibition event. Oddly enough, Murray was one of the few players who didn't test positive for COVID after that tournament, but he actually beat the very rusty-looking Nadal in Abu Dhabi, and he had a couple of top 10 wins late last year. So I think he feels like there's a lot left in the tank. I think tennis purists. A lot of I read the comments on Reddit. I go on Twitter a lot. Murray, he's got so many fans across the world. The passion's always going to be there. The fighting spirit, the love of the game. He bleeds this game. He's all heart. He's all class. Give me a Grand Slam quarterfinal for Muzz this year. I think he makes the quarterfinals at a major this season. I would love to see it. A couple of other guys who we won't see at the Australian Open, unfortunately. Stan Wawrinka, the world 82. Milos Raonic, the world number 70. Both of those guys a bit lower in their rankings than they're accustomed to because Stan coming off foot surgery and Raonic has been nursing a calf injury. So, again, both are out of Melbourne, but they should be back soon, fingers crossed. Speaking of injuries, one more guy I want to talk about. One of my other favorites. I know I've said a lot of guys are my favorite. Look, I have a lot of rooting interests. I like a lot of these guys, but Juan Martín del Potro, we haven't seen him in a couple of years at this point, but he made a post on Instagram a couple of weeks ago. Delpo is hopeful to be back in February, as early as February for the South American clay swing in Buenos Aires and Rio de Janeiro. He's had multiple right knee surgeries. We know he's got a long litany of wrist injuries. I think he's had like 4 injuries or 4 surgeries on that left wrist. He's another player, though, who I was fortunate enough to see, like Dan Evans, at that tournament in Delray Beach in 2019. And it was just great seeing him in person. The whole atmosphere, everyone's, olaying all across the stadium and chanting Del Po. People love him just like Andy Murray. And yeah, I can't wait. I'm probably going to get a little bit emotional if and when Del Po returns, hopefully pretty soon. So that is Juan Martín. And let's make some predictions. Let's talk about some predictions. It's probably a little bit more fun to predict Grand Slams on the women's side, I'm going to be honest. Because on the men's side, it's like you can only spice it up so much without sounding like a Stephen A. Smith who's trying to manufacture hot takes just to get ratings or whatever. Like, I can't just say, I think that, I think Schwartzman's going to win the Australian Open, or I think that Alcaraz is going to win the French Open. You kind of have to be, there's only 5 to 10 guys who realistically can win each major because it's so top heavy, because we've had so many greats dominating the majors the last decade or two, specifically Federer and Nadal, Djokovic. So again, it's a little bit, there's more unpredictability on the women's side. You have these random winners, Barbara Krejcikova, Emma Raducanu, Bianca Andreescu. Men's side, we don't get that as much. It's like Djokovic, Nadal, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, so whatever. Australian Open, though. I feel pretty good about this one. And this is if Djokovic plays or if he doesn't, if he stays in Serbia, whatever. I do think that Daniil Medvedev will win the 2022 Australian Open. You can play this back in February after I'm either correct or incorrect, but the way Medvedev dominated at the U.S. Open, the only guy he dropped the set to in New York was Botic van de Zandschulp. Botic, the only guy who was able to pierce Medvedev's armor even a little bit. I mean, that final was completely one-way traffic, Medi over Djokovic. So I think the hardcourt king continues his stellar play there. Medvedev winning the Aussie Open. I'm gonna go basic. I'm gonna go chalk with Roland Garros and say that Rafael Nadal will be healthy enough and he will win the French Open. I mean, he's still the odds-on favorite right now. I think he's about plus 150 maybe. Djokovic is like plus 240 from some books that I've seen. So, Djokovic got the better of him last year. 14 Roland Garros titles, though, it doesn't lie. Wimbledon, got to give Djokovic his respect here. I think this is where Djokovic ties Nadal with 21 overall Grand Slams. We'll say that Joker wins at Wembley. And I'm going to say the 2022 U.S. Open, which, by the way, the U.S. Open has been the most unpredictable of the men's Grand Slams, at least. For the most part, it's been Federer, Nadal, Djokovic winning those first 3. But U.S. Open, we have gotten a little bit of variation. Del Potro in 2009, Cilic in 2014, Dominic Team in 2020. I will say that Alexander Zverev wins his first major title. He's going to be the U.S. Open champion, though, in Flushing Meadows. I think the year-end number 1, as I said before, year-end number 1 will be Daniil Medvedev, because of the fact that he's going to be playing a lot more tournaments throughout the year than Djokovic. Joker, only 13 tourneys played in 2021, so Medvedev is in peak physical shape. He's gonna play a lot more, and he's becoming a threat on all 3 surfaces. So I think Med's going to end up the number 1 player at the end of the season, and I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say Yannick Sinner wins the ATP Finals in his home country, in Turin, Italy, at the end of the season. Give me Sinner to win that. Don't be surprised if Sinner makes a Grand Slam final this year. I think I might be jumping the gun on that one by a year or 2, but there's so much to love about young Yannick. So don't be surprised about that. And again, Dominic Team, the ultimate X factor for the 2022 tennis season. If he can get healthy, all right, so he's out of the Aussie Open. Let's see how he looks in Argentina in late January. but Team is the guy who you've got to watch out for. He could be in the top 5 again very quickly. He's the ultimate X factor. So that is that's pretty much all I've got. Cheers.